What's going on, wrestling fans? It's I, Steve Falk with the 10 Count Media with a Sean Mooney moment. I have the voice of a generation. It's Sean Mooney. How are you
He's
doing today?
back. He's back. You can't get rid of me, Steve. See, I just keep showing up. At
Yeah,
least
every
I'm not
time I.
standing in front of the house, which I am across the
I
country
think
somewhere.
that's you out there. Weird stuff. But we are on the road to
Yes.
WrestleMania, and you were involved with so many amazing WrestleMania moments in your time in the WWF. That's right, put the F back in. But today we're
Yes.
talking about the storyline build and what the hell is actually going on backstage between Hulk Hogan and the
Hmm.
Ultimate Warrior heading into WrestleMania 6. Now, let's set the stage. Hogan has been the face of the company for years at this point, but he has his eye on Hollywood. And so Vince McMahon clearly is looking for the next star, maybe Macho Man when he was world champion for a year, but Ultimate Warrior seems to be the guy that he is convinced. Now, you are backstage. Obviously, you're an employee of the WWF. People are gossiping about what's happening. What
Hmm.
is the thought process when somebody in the office hears, "Hey, I think Hogan's going to Hollywood and this Warrior, I think he's going to be the next guy." What are people thinking? Are they thinking this is a good decision or a bad decision?
Well, as you said, there was so much to unpack here as far as what was going on behind the scenes because uh, at the same time, as you mentioned, Terry Hulk Hogan is eyeing Hollywood.
Hmm.
But he has been the king for years within the WWF, WWE. And this is an opportunity for him to step away on top, in a sense, um, graciously give up the title, and then go on and do whatever he wants to do. And of course, the door would always still be open. Now,
Mm.
that's what it looks like when you just lay it out. But there's all of this other drama happening because human emotions are involved. Hulk is thinking, and I certainly was not in that head, but
Mm.
I'm thinking and seeing what's going on behind the scenes. He's like, yes, this is what I need to do. It's a great opportunity for me. Hollywood is calling. People want to see me in a different venue and different light. And yet, this is what this is where it all happened. And first of all, am I going to regret making that decision leaving? And the other one is am I leaving it off to the right person? Could this guy just make it all come tumbling down? And when it really gets down to it, I think it'll like him better than me. That
Yes.
I mean, it all comes. It's all elementary school. If you think about how everything works, it's schoolyard, and that is what's happening. And at the same time, you've got what's happening behind the curtain, the blue curtains that we've got there at the arenas. Uh, Warrior is not the best liked in the World Wrestling Federation. He doesn't play by the rules. Many feel like he didn't pay his dues, and I've heard from people telling me it's not like he just showed up at an arena. I get it, I get it. Maybe 5 years before, and he did get had been in the ring several times, but you got to think about where these other guys came from. Hulk Hogan, you talk about paying his dues, and if you know the stories of how he came up, I mean, they broke his leg back in the. I
Yep.
mean, he came in through the old school. Uh, their whole idea is you show up at one of those gyms, their entire focus is make this guy quit. We don't want him here. And if by God, some way that we don't beat him down enough that he shows up at that door again, we'll give him another shot and then we'll do the same exact thing and we'll do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And if he keeps showing up, okay, we'll give him a chance.
Yeah.
So, and Steve, you and I have talked many times about life on the road and what these guys did and the generations of families. And Warrior didn't come from that. So we're at a point in history in professional wrestling that this is all maybe going to get turned over to someone who didn't come from that world. He is the epitome of coming from the outside in a sense. And there was a lot of resentment. I'll tell you
So
that.
I would say, like, if we're looking at dollars and cents here, Hogan's
Hmm.
obviously the guy putting t-shirts on a lot of backs at every arena. I would say at this point in time, heading into WrestleMania 6, Warrior is second in command, selling the most merchandise.
Mhm.
So maybe, I guess you know, is do you think that people say, well, like, man, he's unprofessional, man, I don't like him, but damn, he's putting butts in seats, he's selling t-shirts, so maybe I personally don't like him, but he is putting money in my pocket. So I guess the idea is it okay for business to be going well with me personally not liking you? What was the sense? I guess the office believed in Warrior, obviously, because they're seeing the money. The
Yeah.
wrestlers, you're saying, not the same case.
Well, but you have a really great point there, and that's how the business worked back then. Is that the card is what got you paid, and what I mean by that is that at that point in time, the way they earned their living, they did not have guaranteed contracts. They didn't even have contracts. Everyone was an independent contractor, and that anybody in the business world understands that who works on their own, and one job to the next is pretty much how you live. You have nothing that's guaranteed. So on one hand, they have a person who is bringing people to the arenas. I mean that and are blowing the roof off places. And when that happens, the gate is up. But on the other side of it, you're thinking, well, sure, that's great, but this guy didn't earn it in their minds. And so, they got to work through it, but at the same time, they don't have to like it. And so, yeah, there was, a sense of, they're going to hand the keys to the guy, and we don't believe that, and they're also thinking, well, why not me? There were the guys there that felt like,
that, yeah.
Why not me?
Because you have the machine. The machine is giving Warrior these wins. The machine is giving him this music, the look, the tassels, the makeup. I know it came from somewhere, but at the same time, like, if the machine suddenly, no disparaging words to him, like Hercules Hernandez suddenly got this giant push, would it be the same thing? Or is it Warrior was given the perfect part, like in a movie where suddenly this actor was perfect for this part? Any other part, he would flop. But this, it's working for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's many people that understood that, the Hercules Hernandez, and these people that understood. Okay, I'm not I'm not a top of the card guy, and I want the fact that I get to be a part of this is awesome. But at the same time, you also had several on that roster who felt like, no, I could carry that torch, and you certainly don't get to a certain level without having that belief system with you, because nobody else is going to give it to you. So you're going to feel that way. And Warrior didn't help himself in that sense. I mean, let's say you get put into that situation, and you can liken it really to any sports. You come in and you're a superstar guy, but you realize that I have to be part of a team. And of course, it's different in the sense that you're, basically going out there and you're an individual personality, but you've got to work with that entire roster to make it work. These guys help you in every single way. They're going to be there's guys that got to go out there and do a squash match with you that and many had to do that, but they didn't help them. They did what they had to do, but at the same time, they didn't help them, and it could have been much better. It could have been much easier. It could have, he could have been counseled more by these guys to tell him, look, this is the way you got to do this. It doesn't make sense, but you're not part of this world. I grew up in it, and the fact that he separated himself that way and listened to a lot of people who weren't even associated with the business. They might have known business, but they didn't know the wrestling business.
Of course.
And so that certainly didn't help matters at all.
No. So the year previous to that, though, Hogan doesn't lose the title technically. It's through technicality, double referees, plastic surgery, the $1 Million Man storyline, which I'd love to discuss at a different point. But Macho Man then steps into I'm the world champion, I'm the face, but yet Hogan is next to me the whole time. I'm covered in Hulk Hogan dust. I can't get it off me.
Yeah.
What did Savage think about this? Because he's world champion. He's a good guy. He turns heel to lose to Hogan back at WrestleMania 5. But then we're off into let's build Warrior up to become the new champion. Savage had that opportunity, but he really didn't because he was hooked to Hulk Hogan. Did you ever speak to Savage, or did you ever hear rumors of like, how did he feel about this? Because they tried this with him and it sort of worked. Business didn't go down. With Warrior coming in, like Savage thinking, well, what the hell, man? What was the whole point of the year ago when I could do the
Yeah.
same thing right now?
Yeah. Well, and I think that Randy had the innate ability to be able to kind of look at it in a bigger picture, because I do remember having conversations with him about how he felt about it at the time. And sure, it was a bitter pill, but remember, he grew up in the business. He understood how it worked.
Right.
And when you've got a rocket taking off, man, you've got to see where it's going to go. And I think he understood that, and he was in for the long haul. He understood that where he had built himself up, it wasn't where he was necessarily he wasn't going to fall too far down the list of how things were going to go. I think that he felt if it would have been a different scenario, yeah. But I think that he got it. And it's clear by the way he handled himself through that whole thing. And then, there was much more payoff later, I guess you could put it in a sense.
Right. Yeah.
But then, yeah, it was very difficult for him to have to sit back and watch that happen. There's no question about that.
Because like in today's wrestling world, if you're a bad guy, people are buying your shirts because the world's different. Where people are like, "Oh, I want to buy your shirt." Macho Man's probably selling Macho Man shirts. Suddenly, he turns into a bad guy. Little Jimmy and little Billy don't want their mom and dad to go to the store or go on the little catalogs and buy Macho Man merchandise because he hurt their hero. And I could see that being a problem because your wallet, it's the wrestling business. Like you're supposed to be here.
But they're also, Steve. This is another thing that I had several conversations because I was able to talk to people like Bruce Pritchard and Pat Patterson, and I was not somebody who was really savvy to the business. I learned a lot being there. I took a lot of it in, and I remember saying to Bruce one time, why, that guy's awesome. Why don't they put a belt on him? And he said, because they don't have to. And I was like, wow. Because they were such a dynamic personality in a sense that they were going to keep selling that stuff. They could keep themselves in the mix of things and still be as popular as ever. They didn't need the strap. You would, of course, along the way, they would get in the mix of things, but that showed you like a unique talent. Randy, I felt like was one of those kind of people. There were some of the guys that had the Intercontinental belt, that like, for example, like, let's say like Honky Tonk Man. Now Honky Tonk Man was never a main eventer in a sense,
right?
But whether or not he was the Intercontinental Champion or not, he was still going to be a popular superstar.
Well, I interviewed Jake the Snake Roberts, and he does not feel the same way. He thinks
Jake felt he always had to have a strap. No, and Jake's a classic example too. But Jake may feel that way. But I feel like Jake was another guy that, of course, you put a belt on him. Okay, it's going to elevate him or to a sense, but look at the career Jake had.
Incredible.
And Jake didn't have, if you looked at him from a sense and I just described him to you, you would say he was that successful at what he did. He wasn't an incredible, physical specimen. He wasn't a tactician in the ring. He's and taking nothing away with what he could do. But I hope you know what I'm saying. He was such a dynamic force in the ring with his persona and the way that he carried himself in the ring and the way he would pull off the DDT on people you wouldn't imagine he could do it to.
Well, he had a snake too, like no one else has.
Yeah.
You throw a snake on someone.
That really is an interesting perspective that I've never heard that was Jake's perspective, because I distinctly remember like Bruce telling me, some guy, you don't need to. They don't need a belt. And
I can imagine that person thinking differently, though.
Yeah, and that's no. And if I
Yeah,
wasn't in the ring, but and of
yeah,
course you want that recognition. But to me, that's in a sense an ultimate compliment
of course.
that you've got that power in the ring that you don't need that strap around your waist to to get to that level.
Well,
And
we
there were
will.
guys like
Yeah.
that that I always was incredibly impressed with that they could do that. Would they have gotten a belt and that would have been great, furthered their career? I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of guys that never did, and I think they were more successful that did have a belt on their waist. So
True, true. Well, this WrestleMania 6 thing will definitely bring up a few topics like that
yeah.
because, it is for title heading into that. But the biggest thing about the build up to Hogan and Warrior is Royal Rumble 1990. Up to this point, we really haven't had many moments in the Royal Rumble. 88 was a USA special. 89 was a pay-per-view with Big John Studd winning. He
Mm.
wasn't around for a few. He kind of left after that. This moment in the 1990 Royal Rumble begins, I think, this trend where, oh, this Royal Rumble match can kick off this WrestleMania season and start building towards other matches. And having your Intercontinental Champion and your World Champion in the ring at the same time, bumping heads in the ring, having actual physical conflicts with each other. This is the first time we've ever seen this in the
Yeah.
WWF at this point in time. Two baby faces, too. Two baby faces. Like, take me through that process. You're there watching this. Are other old timers, say like Gorilla Monsoon, questioning the fact that you're putting two good guys against each other? Because now you're splitting your audience because it's supposed to be good guy versus bad guy.
Well, and that just comes down to the basic philosophy of how wrestling worked. It was always babyface versus heel. Uh, a philosophy of having somebody who, uh, you know, the both of them going at it was like, how could this possibly work?
Right.
But it shows that that it came down to with that it was and even to this day like Steve, you talk to people and say who who is your guy? Was it Hulk or Warrior? They don't tell you it's both,
No,
right? It's
one or
either
the other.
Hulk or Warrior. Okay, they were both baby faces. Why one over the other? And that's kind of the way it came down to. It wasn't necessarily good guy versus bad guy. It was these two guys going at it. Who do you want to see come out on top? And and there had been few before. Jake is one of those guys who you would think is just a bad guy. How do you ever make that guy any different? How many people love Jake? Right? Just
Undertaker
because
is a
he
good
was,
example
and then
too.
of course, and then of course the epitome of it is Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Yes.
who was
Yeah.
always a bad guy, and you still loved him. So to me, that's kind of the philosophy behind it. I think that really was an example, and there were others, but I'm saying not on that scale, where it was either you were a Hulk guy or a Warrior guy. It didn't have anything to do with that guy being a bad guy or the other one being a good guy.
It really set up a scenario though for the first time in main event history where you were
Yeah.
actually, because if you, like, I consider like starting at WrestleMania 1 as like the beginning, the golden era of wrestling that you were involved with. And
Hmm.
with Hogan and Warrior, years have gone on where people try to compare like, oh, Austin and Rock fighting each other. Like, there's only a few instances where there are two good guys that are so even that you're like, I don't, I don't, who, like you said, whose side
Yeah.
do you want, Hogan or
Yeah.
Warrior?
Well, and
Hogan.
Randy and Hulk too
Same
had
thing.
this
Yeah, same exact
created
thing.
the
Don't
same
leave Randy out of that
situation.
conversation. Yeah, it's like a triangle right there. Hogan wins
Yeah.
this Royal Rumble, though, but accidentally eliminating Ultimate Warrior in the process.
Right.
Accidentally, of course. So that really doesn't make people happy.
Yeah.
Now, do you understand, at least, did someone ever talk to you and be like, okay, because I know you go through the Royal Rumble and people explain how it goes and you have to go through the whole process. At one point, you get to the script and it's like, all right, well, here's the point where Hogan tosses out Warrior. Like,
Like,
does Warrior go, I'm
yeah.
sorry, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
well, as you know, those production meetings that we were never really privy to uh, the inside of what was going on. But I remember because I was close to a lot of people that and going, wow, how's that going to go over? You
right.
know, knowing ahead. And yeah, believe me, there was a lot of people who were raising eyebrows on that one and how it would go over. Was that going to make it was Hulk going to instantly turn heel, or was it people were going to understand that it was, well, it just happened that way. I mean, my goodness,
he was told
or
that,
there were
and I think
people who
somebody
felt
else.
that, yeah, but at the same time, like I said, there were Hulk people, there were the Hulksters who said, no, whatever he does, it's for a reason, or it was, completely, my God, like an act of God. He would never do that.
And then he wins the
So
Rumble too, though. He tosses out Warrior by
yeah,
accident, and then he wins the Rumble. Like, I can't
yeah,
imagine, of all the stories I've heard of Ultimate Warrior and his reactions to certain things, I can't imagine his reaction was, "Yeah, that sounds good to me, buddy."
yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
No.
So it is. But what was good, what was refreshing about it was changing how business was done,
Hmm.
which I remember back then, like, it's awesome. I remember my early days there and thinking of every storyline was it's, A, B, C, D, or E. It was it was so old school, and it was just different faces, different circumstances of, when this happens, then this is, of course, is going to happen. This
Right.
is heel versus baby face. And so it was refreshing to see that they were throwing out these new scenarios and honest to God, wondering, okay, how's this going to play out? I mean, there really was that sense. But remember, Steve, that riding this wave for a lot of years uh, from the beginning. And at some point that wave is going to crest. You've got to, how much longer could Hulk go on? Let's say Hulk didn't have aspirations of going to Hollywood or getting the opportunities or seeing what else was out there. How long can you ride that? If you know the history of how the territories work, they would have like some great run. A guy might get 2-3 years out of it even. But at some point, that guy had to move on. And it wasn't just, you didn't get moved down the card. The way they understood is that guy goes away. He goes to another territory
Yep.
and works with somebody else. And they're going to send Andre here, and he's going to work here for a while. And then that guy, the guy that was on top before, comes back. Maybe it's a couple of years later. And that's kind of how it worked. But when you have what Vince did, it became certainly nationwide of how the storylines work. I mean, we certainly went beyond that after that, but think about it in a sense that where do you go? You don't send. I mean, that was a sense of maybe sending Hulk off for a while so that people would miss him, or get new blood in there, and then he would come back.
And it's been 6 years right now. You're talking about
Right,
84 is when
right,
they win the
right.
championship. So he's been running this since 84 to 1990.
And unbelievably so, right? So, but at some point that wave had to crest. It had to. It just, everything changes. So, Warrior was tasked with carrying it on.
I kind of feel bad for Warrior for that, though,
I do,
because
unfortunately, yeah,
it lands on him.
yes, it did,
Unfortunately, it did, because
and
we'll get to it. But we'll dive right now. Hogan beat everybody.
yeah,
Everybody. So when
yeah,
Warrior finally won the championship, there was no one for him to beat. His first rivalry was the guy he already beat a year ago, Rick Rude. He didn't get to fight Earthquake. Earthquake was fighting Hogan.
mhm,
Uh, and then when heading to Survivor Series, more Hulk Hogan dust. Warrior and Hogan are side by side. Then he loses his title at Royal Rumble.
yeah,
Like, that's there was no win situation for him. It was, hey, won the title, good luck, and that was it. Like, there was no setup for him. But this I want to really bring up. It's title for title. They announce it WrestleMania 6. It's coming up. It's gonna be world champion versus IC champion, title for
yeah,
title. Bruce
yeah,
Pritchard, though, in his podcast said it was never supposed to be title for title. Vince would call it title for title. But in Vince's mind, according to Bruce Pritchard, it wasn't actually like Hogan was going to win the Intercontinental title, which
no,
I find really bizarre because Warrior does win the world title. Like, Did it ever get brought up to you when you were
Yeah,
at
and you know what?
the
And I
event
don't think
center trying to promote this?
yes, yeah, I do, and we had to be really careful with the wording of it. I do remember that, but uh, I mean, in a kind of a sense, it gave it away a little bit to me. I'm like
Mm,
thinking, well, Hulk wins, he doesn't become the double champion. I mean, how does this work?
right.
But the Warrior can be. Right? So
Yeah.
I just kind of tipped it to me a little bit, but yeah, at the same time, uh that was that was a big discussion of what's going on with this. But I don't remember. I don't think anybody got fixated on that. I think is my
Mm,
point. I don't remember anybody telling me that, like pointing it out. I just remember the discussions Howard would have with me and say, "Just be very careful. Be real careful. Don't say." And I'm like, well, but that doesn't make any sense.
right.
And aren't people going to wonder why? But it didn't. Like people just okay. Guess that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm sure there were people out there that did wonder, but it never became. And maybe you can go back in the dirt sheets and maybe check it out and see if that was a. But I honestly, I don't remember ever it being uh, the point where. And we certainly don't have what we have now with our communication system with people being able to post comments and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I just think it was just one of the and a lot of things when they came up with it was just okay. This is why we're doing it. Okay, everybody good? All right, awesome. You know, like
Title
they
for
didn't.
title.
Nobody
Title for
questioned it.
title.
Oh yeah, nobody questioned it. It's like okay, I guess that's right. I mean, if Jack Tunney says it's true, it must be.
Of course, the
The
president of
president.
the WWF. If he says it, it's true.
Yeah,
The guy
yeah.
banned reptiles from ringside. Okay,
See? Yeah,
he is certainly. We'll talk about Jack Tunney's controversial presidential decisions at
yeah.
some point. But yeah, that's funny you say
I
that
think they're
because
releasing all the transcripts. They're supposed to come
oh,
out.
they were
Yes, all
finally
the
gonna
recordings.
find out.
Recordings are coming out. Yeah,
Oh,
so
thank
stay
God.
tuned for those.
We'll finally hear Heenan and Gorilla with their secret conversations
Yes.
about Jack Tunney being a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Though heading into this, we have obviously the friction of how do we make baby faces not look evil heading into this. So there's this constant storyline of accidentally bumping into each other, or Hogan accidentally punches Warrior, or Hogan actually causes Warrior. Like, I would imagine it's difficult because now you have the scenario we brought up kind of earlier, good guy versus good guy, but you don't want either
Yeah.
one to seem like they are a bad guy heading into this. Like, how difficult do you feel like it was for the storyline and both men to not come off as like, oh well, I accidentally hit you, but I also don't like you. Like that's weird because you're fighting each other, but yet you're trying not to seem like you don't like each other.
Well, and also you're trying not to make it seem like you don't like each other, but you want everybody to kind of to really know that you don't like each other.
Right.
You know, it's just very fine psychological. You can't be too obvious, but you got to have hints. And that's where you saw, different, like you said, just little hints of little tips of people to pick up on. And they love the fact that, that wrestling fans were very good at that.
You loved it.
At,
Little
at
breadcrumbs.
taking those, yes, and looking for those tells. So and the brilliance of storytelling. I mean, these guys are professionals. They that's how they made their careers of being able to and change people's psychology and the way they looked at things. That's what wrestling is all about. And we've had discussions before when I talk about these guys coming up early on and working crowds. Well, it's all about psychology
Mhm.
and making people believe what you're selling them. And so level, these guys are very good at it. Randy Savage was very good at it. Hulk Hogan was very good at that. And go down the roster that a lot of those guys were really uh, Warrior didn't have to do a whole lot, just as far as that what just do what they wanted them to do. But they did a whole lot to help that spread those little tips, those tells for people to pick up on, and it worked.
Oh yeah.
People knew there was a simmering of these emotions between all these people that at some point had to burst.
Yeah, well, it definitely bursts when Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior start cutting promos on each other and leading into this matchup. And one of the most famous ones is Ultimate Warrior talking about how he's going to hijack Hulk Hogan's plane and
Mhm.
drive it into a mountain
Yeah,
and pretty much say he's killing Hulk Hogan.
yeah,
Did you ever discuss this? Like, because this is still technically a children's program, I guess. Like, it's not really like 100% a
yeah.
children's program. At the same time, like, you're having very superhero like characters talking about murdering the other person in a plane crash. Did you ever speak to Hogan or know anything of his thoughts about, like, I don't think we should really say that he's going to hijack my plane and drive it into a mountain?
Yeah, but I think that it was, the order of the day. Like if you think about what it was like, we're so much more sensitive to words
Mm,
today.
true, true, true.
Where back then, when you said something like that, everybody goes, "No, he just wants him. He just wants to beat him. He doesn't really want to kill him." Yeah, and so he really ever when they and Warriors promos were certainly. But I don't remember everything, people taking it literally, anything that any of them said. It was all part of how you promoted a wrestling match. If I think you would have literally had to say, uh, I want to get a bazooka. I want to go to your house and stand out front and shoot one right through your living room window, before people would think, oh, gee, that's a little stiff. I think that they kind of understood what you were insinuating when you said, get on this 747 and drive it into a mountain,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So,
Well, all right. I have the
I don't think
transcript. I have the
I think
transcript
when
up.
yeah, but I think when he was doing promos, I honestly think there were times when Jim would say stuff and even he was thinking like, wow, that's out there. Like, man, I don't know where that came from.
The skeletons have
Yeah,
sacrificed
but
themselves and
I
all
honestly,
that.
I don't think it was where everybody was going, man, that's wow, he really wants to murder him. It wasn't. It was all part of how you did preps for a big match. You know.
True. And though the transcript is hilarious because they don't actually spell Hulk Hogan, they spell it the way he was saying it, Ho Kogan.
Oh,
So this
he
is this
called him
one.
a hoe. My
Yeah. Oh my
God,
God.
what's he
1990s.
wrong? That's
Scandalous.
terrible.
This
Yeah.
is one. This is just couple of sentences. I think this is
Yeah.
hilarious. Ho Kogan. Kick the
Hoke.
doors out, kick the cockpit down, take the two pilots that have already made the sacrifice so you can face the challenge, dispose of them, Ho Kogan, assume the controls, Ho Kogan, shove that control into nosedive, Ho Kogan, push yourself to this total self destruction. And of course, there's more and more and more, but it really jumps out at you as like, wow, this guy was spacey, but also at the same time, never did I this is really going to be something that people have to accept is as a child watching this didn't think anything of it as an
Right.
adult
So, like you're saying,
until the
you
internet
were
came out did
watching
I
it.
start
Yeah.
going like this is weird.
Yeah. My God, he wants to kill him. Really? Oh, it's too much. No, you never thought that for a second.
No.
You just like, oh man, he can't wait to face Hulk Hogan. He
Yeah,
doesn't want
yeah,
to really he wants to dispose of bullets. Like,
he wants to kill
yeah,
the
yeah.
pilot and all
But
these
honestly, Steve, I'll
people.
tell you, I remember being those in, they had the cubes that we'd send to all the TV tapings, and there would be 5 or 6 people in there, Howard with the book, and we do these promos, and honestly, we would be standing there like going, like looking at each other, like, what was that? And I told you, like Bobby Heenan said, I remember one time he had some promo, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And Bobby's like, doesn't matter, he's the Warrior.
Yeah,
And that pretty
he's
much
selling
summed it up.
tickets.
Yeah,
He's selling
yeah,
tickets and
it's
big
true.
ratings too. The final showdown between these two men is actually on the main event March 30th, 1990. If no one knows, because the WWF started doing it again, where NBC specials would air in place of sometimes no Saturday Night Live, or also
Yeah,
sometimes on Friday nights it'd be in prime time at 8 o'clock p.m. So then you'd have like a
big
real
time.
large audience on NBC watching these programs. So this was a big thing in 1990, especially because after '92 there are no Saturday night's main events because business was so low that none of these companies wanted to air
Yeah.
wrestling in prime time. So seeing these two men in prime time, one final conflict heading in, again, this is March 30th, heading in April 1st, 1990. The ultimate challenge is what they were building this match as, too. Could Hulk
Mhm.
Hogan defeat the Ultimate Warrior? He already defeated so many other men like Piper, King Kong Bundy, Andre the Giant, $1 Million Man, Macho Man. Now can he fight a fellow good guy, the Warrior? Heading into this, what is the temperature backstage? Because there has to be a thought process of, will Hulk Hogan actually get pinned by Warrior?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you just have to remember the what it meant to be on Saturday night's main event. That
Mm-hmm.
was that was a huge, uh, you know, thing for one of the superstars to be asked to be on there because there wasn't a lot of people that were asked to be on those shows. It was a very tight, uh, you know, lineup, very quick. You know, when the matches were not long, it was very scripted. So
And Superstar versus Superstar, let's not forget
yeah,
that because they didn't have
yeah,
that on regular TV.
yeah. No, and you had yeah, it was an opportunity for people to see these guys actually in the ring against you. It wasn't some jobber that they had for like you'd see at Wrestling Challenge and Superstars. So I really believe going into that. No, it's not going to happen. There's no way it's going to happen. And you know how you could do this. Uh, you have some kind of disqualification. You have some kind of something happen. Somebody runs in, or where it's not, or there's a major cheat. Well, here you have two guys where you really can't have that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be done in a way that you know where something occurs that where one of them ends up coming out on top, what you want to call it for the night. So, but I think that anybody that was really smart to the business and what was going on knew that. But just seeing them in the ring together, and you're just hoping that they have it's a good match. It's good entertainment because they know it's not going to be settled there. It's going to somehow it's going to raise whatever's going on in that storyline to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did that. You know, that if people remember back to that match, uh, it was a great way to do it. So you put everything else aside, what everybody else is thinking. Um, People are certainly, if you're in a camp, you're probably in Hulkster's camp. But at the same time, this is where the business is. This is where we're going, and you have to, in a sense, root for both of them. That's kind of the way I felt about it because it just raises everything up. You know, a lot of people just didn't understand what this whole thing that's going on here. It's raising everything up. It may not be what you'd like to see happen, but at the same time, uh, this guy is helping to change the business and keep it going.
Right.
That's kind of
Well,
the way, and I think everybody sensed at that point in time that, I mentioned the wave cresting, but, uh, Hulkster's popularity was starting to, you got to have someone match you, no matter how big you are in any source of entertainment or in sports especially. You could be the greatest boxer in the world. If you don't have somebody that can step in the ring with you, who's going to go toe to toe with you and make it an exciting match, well, who the hell wants to see it?
right. Who's going to
So
pay for
that's
that?
that's kind of where we were at, and the big question was backstage: can the Warrior uh, can Warrior do that with someone like Hulk Hogan?
And I would say too, to both men's credentials, is you look at all the past WrestleMania main events. Each one, I feel like, tries to top them, and most of them do. Like from one to now, it's six. like, how do you top Savage versus Hogan? Well, this is going to do
Hmm.
it. Warrior versus Hulk Hogan. How do you top four the ending of a tournament with Macho Man? You know, each one beat the next WrestleMania. I think in the main event scheme of things,
Yeah.
this one, the Ultimate Challenge, I think hit so high, like what a high mark, that the only place to go from being on top of the mountain is down the mountain. And
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly, God, like 1990 WrestleMania 6, Pontiac Silverdome, you know, fans going crazy. You can see everyone. It's very hard to pinpoint when a company starts going down. This might be it because of how well this was put together. Where else do you go? You just had the best match in the past, you know, 6 7 years. Not match, I guess it would be storyline and the anticipation and the entertainment surrounding it that brought all these eyeballs. So it's very hard to argue that Hogan and Warrior is not one of the best matches in WrestleMania history because of being at the top of their game. But people
Yeah.
argue and saying it should be like a catch can style move for move match. But hey, the butts were in the seats, and the butts were in the seats for this.
Well, and you know, I it's my large animal here barking. Sorry about that.
I was just gonna make a
But
wife joke, but I didn't. I did
so
though.
yeah, don't do that.
I won't.
Uh, I make the boxing analogy, and I think it does closely align with what we're talking about because I was a gigantic fan of Muhammad Ali growing up, and you know he's the greatest. I don't think there's what's the first word out of someone's mouth or first name that comes out of their mouth if you ask
Yeah.
who's the greatest fighter is, right?
Yeah.
But what would he have been without Frazier? What would he have been without George Foreman? God, rest in peace. That hit me hard too, growing up watching him. And uh, if you don't have someone who can step into the ring that's going to match your level, then there's nothing to watch. There's no, you need that drama. You need that excitement that these two, you know, can that person beat this other human being? And it was the same thing here. Who could match Hulk Hogan? Who could step toe to toe with him? Randy was, you know, maybe his Frazier. I don't know. Warrior, maybe he was his foreman, but they reached that level, and you absolutely needed that. And you mentioned about the matches they had. Well, really leading up to that, and I was certainly one of them going, they can't do a 3 minute match, whatever
Mhm.
they do. You can't have Warrior come in, do shake the ropes, stiff clothesline, take Hulk down and pin him, or you can't have Warrior come in and Hulk take him down and drop the leg. They've got to go 20, 25 minutes. And the thing was, what do you do? How do they do that?
Yeah.
Nobody had really ever seen Warrior do that to an extent where it was something that was great and entertaining. And I think he stepped up during that run. And looking back, I think you have to give him credit. That it's not an
100%.
easy thing to go up against someone that's a human force of the universe. Hulk may have said that himself, but it's the truth that you're going to step into the ring with him. You better keep up. You better be able to stand up there and bring make it a show, make it entertaining to people, so that they are glad they showed up that night.
And they did too, which is you just brought up a really good point. I love that
Yeah,
how Warriors matches up to this point very quick, and
yeah.
sometimes they lasted
Everybody
five
wondered, could he
minutes.
go? Could he go? I mean, what's he going to do? What else has he got in that toolbox? It really was a big question.
And that really shows you, I guess, the professionalism of even Hulk Hogan, because we were talking earlier when we started this. Can Hulk Hogan give Ultimate Warrior all this leeway in a match to make Warrior look strong? Also, Hogan has to look strong too. Can he allow him to do this? Because it might dilute Hulk Hogan. Because if he's going off to Hollywood, well, maybe the producers and executives are going, well, why do I want a loser? Hulk Hogan's not the world champion anymore. He's just a guy who's a wrestler. Like, how hard can we let him fall? And in this
Mhm.
matchup, obviously, it shows you that both men sat down together and were like, okay, we both want to be number one, but obviously tonight's Warrior Sure night. We have to figure out how to make both of us look good so none
Mhm.
of us look weak. And I
Yeah.
think that's, I don't think people really bring that up in this match. They're just looking at it going, well, how did Warrior put up 25 minutes? And it's true. How did he? And do you know who, at least you talked to after this matchup, the people who were involved with Pat Patterson, was Vince McMahon? How many hands were involved in making sure this match didn't last just 3 minutes?
Well, of course, all of them. I mean, and let's not, we've got to give Jim credit. I mean, he didn't make it to that ring doing 3 minutes a night. He did there were where he came up. He did have to spend time in the ring and do extended matches, and he did have an arm of moves. So, but at the question in that is though at that level and against somebody like Hulk Hogan, that could they put together a match like that? And you mentioned, I mean, it really was. It was a great matchup, and the fact that Hulk agreed to, I mean, it was a clean finish,
Mm,
and
was
well,
it
I
though?
mean, which one are we talking about? I mean, where
Let's talk when he pops
where he
up
takes that
instantly.
belt. Yeah, okay, yeah,
That
but
part.
yeah, but the finish. I mean, and Hulk taking that and giving it to him, giving him the torch, handing it off, and I think that uh, that kind of summed it up. They pulled, I just remember thinking like they pulled it off with everything that, and imagine the journey that they took to get there. So that was my feeling at the time. Others may have felt differently, and people can find flaws in that whole run and that match, but I think overall they pulled it off,
Oh yeah.
and it gave uh, the Hulkster the opportunity to go out and pursue these other things. And was there anybody really in that arena or who around the world who cared that ever thought I will never see Hulk Hogan in the ring again? I knew better, and I think that everybody else did too.
Well, I think it's the idea of like if you think you're not going to see him again, like a band's like, I'm going on the
Yeah,
it's our
yeah,
world tour,
I.
it's
But
over.
did you believe it? Did you think that? I didn't. I knew
Uh
better.
I don't really, I don't, my feelings at the time probably were just like, wow, what, this, that, first off, WrestleMania 6 is like 5 hours long. And
Yeah,
that was the
yeah.
first time that has really ever happened in the WWF for having pay per views that long. The only time that happened was WrestleMania 4, when, here, I'll age the crap out of myself. If you bought WrestleMania 4, it didn't come on one VHS, it came on
Yeah.
two VHSs because it was so long. That's where we
Did
were.
they charge more at the video store for the
Probably.
two of them? Probably.
Oh my God, that's how you made money. Oh,
Yeah,
Grandma only bought you part two of WrestleMania 4.
yeah,
God damn, now I gotta go find part one,
yeah.
Grandma.
They got to charge.
Thanks.
Oh,
Though I could see the only flaw pointing at this is Hogan's like, yeah, I'll lose. Now this is just me speculating. Is
yeah.
Hogan's like, yeah, I'll lose to you, but when you hit me with your finisher and 1, 2, 3, I'm going to pop up instantly. Like I'm not gonna lay down like you hurt me. I'm not gonna lay down like you took me out. I'm going to pop up and get up and look shocked that I lost.
Yes,
Now that to
well,
me does
but
not
you
help
gotta.
Warrior.
All right, true. But understand in how wrestling that was the center of the ring. It wasn't. There wasn't a leg on the rope. They made it clean. I mean, you can't.
No, you
That can't
can't.
be argued.
No.
But yeah, was there a little? I got to let everybody that I didn't sell it enough. Yeah, maybe. Okay, but um, I just can't imagine what that took. What he did give must have
Oh, it was
been
a great match.
tough.
It's an
Yeah,
incredible match, and the fact that
but
he
really, I
allowed him to get
mean,
beat.
think about it, and he's a human being. I'm sure there were many doubts. I love the um, when you hear some of the stories of some of the biggest matches ever, with Hulk and Andre, and Hulk saying that honestly that I really didn't know. He knew, but he didn't know if Andre was going to say okay.
Yeah.
He was going to let him, body slam. Was going to let him pick him up. Uh, there's always that unknown. So, maybe many people, maybe they thought that that wasn't going to end up being a clean finish. Hulk would find a way to, maybe still turn the belt over. But that question of, he knew what there's several options he could have exercised. He did. Whether or not he popped up too soon or didn't sell it enough, well,
That's up to you. Yeah, that's up. I guess it's up to you.
I'll hand that to him. I'll give that to him. But
Yeah.
he did what he had to do. He passed that torch to the Warrior and said, "Dude, let's see what you can do with it, and don't f it up." I think that was kind of his feeling too, because I think uh, Terry could have taken off the kind of the way Rock did and ended up doing 20 major films or something like that. But I think that he always knew, and even Rock now, they that this is what paved the road for them, and they never forgot. And I think Terry always knew that one way or another I'll be back. I don't know in what form, shape, or whatever, but the door isn't closing, and so it's got to be taken care of while I'm gone.
And what I believe Bruce Pritchard also said in one of his podcasts about this actual event was there was no plan for Hogan to grab the championship and hand it to Warrior. He did that on his own. And then when Hogan is supposed to not be on camera again, they show
Yeah,
him on camera looking kind of like looking back at Warrior as he's on the little ring, bringing him back. And that's when Gorilla Monsoon comes up with that line about immortality. Hulk Hogan now has achieved immortality. And that's the first time we ever heard that. And then from that point on, it's like the immortal Hulk Hogan is when he's introduced from that point on. So like the idea of he's not supposed to hand the championship and then he walks away and he's achieved immortality. It's like, damn, you lost, but did you lose? Because
yeah,
now you have reached this new level of course after this we have the campaign with Tugboat showing up
yeah.
demanding we send our addresses to the WWF to get Hulk Hogan back our letters. But that was
Right.
just a letter campaign to get our addresses so you guys could send us catalogs so our parents would buy us shirts and merchandise.
And we did, and they did. Your
And
parents
we
did
we
send
all
those.
did. I
Yeah,
cried, you
yeah.
son of a bitch, Sean
But I
Mooney.
think that what you talk about there with Hulk, it was bigger than Warrior when he stepped out of that ring. I think um, it hit him too that others had done the same for him. Andre did that for him,
True.
and there were other greats who did that for Hulk. And whatever he felt about Warrior, whatever he felt that he might do going forward, uh, it was about the business to him. And I think that is a was a great thing. Like that, that wasn't part of that wasn't the script. That wasn't part of it. That he went in there, and you hear how Jim Warrior went after it was over when he was backstage emotionally, and I'm sure it was just because of a lot of it, just nerves and hoping everything goes well. But he was emotionally, just drained, broke, cried, holding that belt, and I'm sure to him it was a culmination of everything what he'd been through and people not hating him and putting up with people saying he's not worthy. um, so, it just shows you all of that whole situation that was going on. It was huge. It was a pivotal point in the history of the WWF WWE. It really was. I look at that when you saw the that first great era of the WWF end, and what was next beyond that. They had ridden
Especially,
that wave from 1985, really, with WrestleMania one and everything, and it had to at least crest at some point. And if you've been a professional wrestling fan in your life, you know how it's cyclical. It goes, there's peaks and there's valleys, and then it comes back up, and even to this day we're seeing it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
For a long time, I watched Monday Night Raw with celebrity guest general managers, and I'll tell you what, they weren't good general
Yeah,
managers. They were someone who was trying to hawk a book. It didn't matter what book it was.
yeah,
It was like, we got this book. Though this is such a great moment, and you brought it up, is the crest. Once it crashes, do you believe this WrestleMania 6 is the beginning of that crest? Because you were in the company for a few years after this,
yeah,
and eventually, wrestling's in high school gymnasiums. You can see the basketball hoops lifted up. You can
yeah.
see where it took so many years. Say some WrestleMania 6, 91, does good business. 92 is where it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really go back up until end of 1997.
Yeah.
And that's a long
Well,
gap.
and I remember, I mean, like it impacting me personally was that, we went from, having an ABC tour, basically, 3 tours out there across the country, where I was doing customizing in the event center over 100 markets a week, where we were dropping. And then they had 2 tours out there. And the gates were not great. And I remember, we do TV tapings, and you'd be uh, moving people through the night because the crowds were not very big, and you'd get them. We'd move them from one part of the arena or bring them down so that they would fill in the seats. And those TV tapings would be long. They'd last. People show up thinking it's going to be a
2 hours.
couple hours, and it's 5. The kids are falling asleep in the seats. They got school tomorrow, but we need them because we need to tape, more matches, dark matches for the shows.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, you started to see it just start to, and it was not a great time. It was not. It was a dark time watching
I
that happen.
Now let's go back to Warrior win the championship. So he does win the championship,
Hmm.
and Hogan goes away, and that's when I believe is that no holds bar is 1989. So he's off doing Hollywood Suburban
Hmm.
Commando. He's doing the Three Ninjas movie. He's doing a couple other things here and there, but
Nanny and
Mr. Nanny, and eventually when he leaves, does Thunder in Paradise too.
yeah,
But Warriors champion, we kind of alluded to it earlier, was, at least as a company, was there a meeting or a idea of, okay, Warriors the guy, Hogan's out, what's the plan? Because the plan really doesn't seem to exist. It's like, we did it, we got Hogan out, Warriors champion, yeah, we did it. And then from there, as a television viewer, Warrior doesn't have any storylines. Warrior
yeah.
doesn't
Where do you
have
go with them?
anything.
Yeah, where
What
do
do
you
you
go with
do?
them?
Who do you feed him? Everyone's already been fed to Hogan, so it's like getting sloppy seconds in a manner. What was the thought process for you personally watching this happen in your eyes? Because you watched the Hogan era, now you're watching
Yeah,
the Warrior era. Are people saying like, maybe we shouldn't have done this, or maybe we should have prepared for this more?
yeah. I mean, I,
It's like a
I was.
CEO in a company taking
Yeah,
over,
I was surprised by that because they'd always seem to have a plan for me. There was many times when I'd be shaking my head going, why are they doing that? And then it would turn out like, oh,
Mm.
okay. But that was the thing. There was not a whole lot of depth to the warrior character. He didn't have, with the everything with Hulk, there was so many things you could do with him. With these personalities and people not having a beef with him, or and of course with Randy and Elizabeth, and that there was just so many places, and he had these different levels of what you could do with that character, the Hulkster. Uh, what was the Warrior? Yeah, the Warrior was someone who really didn't relate to anyone. I'm talking character wise.
Yeah.
He was in a different plane. He was in another dimension, and no one got it. And I'm a destroyer of So how do you put him into a real life kind of scenario? How do you do that with him? With the face paint and the bangles and all that. How do you, what do you, they get a beef with somebody in the gym? I mean, I don't know, like, you know what I mean?
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
I think that was a struggle throughout that, people still love to see him come into the arena, but then you've got to have a reason why he wants to, destroy and leave all this destruction behind. It's not just because he's got another opponent in the ring who is trying to stop him or something. And so I think they struggled a lot with that. And I think that was one of the major points of why things started to really dip, because that was the beauty of that era to me. I think back at some of the storylines they had; they were just awesome. I know that they would create these characters and make you care about them. And this was a tough one. Like this is the guy who's on top. So I can't even imagine what some of those booking meetings were like. Like, okay, what do you got?
I imagine they were difficult because even SummerSlam
Yeah.
1990 that year, it's the first time they ever call it a double main event. That's the first. It was Warrior versus Rick Rude, Steel Cage, Earthquake versus returning Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So they didn't even give Warrior like the billing of you're the main event. It's the double main event. So you're really telling your audience, hey, he is a champion,
Yeah. I
but
mean, what
Hogan's the
was it?
guy.
Yeah. And like, why are you mad at Rick Rude? Like, what is that? Just because
Because we
we're
fought a year
competitors?
ago.
Right? So yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. You got to create, that the way it works is that when you've got, it's beyond the ring. It's
Yeah.
pretty simple. The storyline's got to be on the ring. Why these guys why it's come down to physical combat
It
for
just
it to
feels
really
like
sell.
just Warrior. I feel like personally his career can't escape Hulk Hogan because even so, you get double main event SummerSlam, Survivor Series, which I absolutely think is the greatest Survivor Series ever. 1990, Gobbledygooker shows up, Undertaker makes his debut, but the
Yeah.
first match is the match that has more makeup than any match in the history, I think, of Survivor
That's
Series.
right.
It's Ultimate Warrior
Yeah.
teaming up with Legion of Doom and the Texas Tornado. Okay, that's
Yeah.
one side. On the other side, you got Demolition, Axe, Smash, and Crush, all in makeup. And Mr. Perfect is the team captain. Everyone has face paint except Texas Tornado and Mr. Perfect. I love it so much, but again, that's the first Survivor Series that has the match of survival. The winner of each
Yeah.
match will go on to a huge match at the end. Good guys and bad guys teaming up on different teams. Again, Warrior, Hogan, final survivors holding hands together. And the storyline with that, Million Dollar Man suggesting in a backstage promo, can these two even work together? They just fought at WrestleMania for the world title. How's this possible? So they're still harping on this. It just feels like Warrior cannot escape this like Hulk
No.
Hogan shadow, unfortunately. And again, you can say whatever you want about these people personally, but as characters, like you can't touch them. Like they are childhood memories for so many people. Warrior though loses to Iraqi sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter at the 1991 Royal
Sergeant
Rumble, and
Slaughter.
Hulk Hogan also wins that Royal Rumble as well.
Yeah.
So there we have. That's the end of Warrior's run, and Hogan goes back to WrestleMania 7, winning the world title. And at the top of the show, we discussed it. Do you need the world championship? It seems like Hulk Hogan does, unlike other characters like Jake the
Yeah.
Snake or Mr.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, and like I don't want to be misunderstood in the sense that uh, would Hulk Hogan have been a huge personality without the championship? Sure. But he was a champion. You expected that he would be a champion.
Mm,
There's some characters that you did, and you had to reach that a certain level of acceptance to the people that watched that wanted it. Randy was the same way. I don't think anybody blinked. Randy was a huge personality, with or without a belt. But when he carried the belt, he could carry it. If somebody's going to be in that position, they've got to be able to carry it. Like Brett, one of the greatest. And anybody's ever heard me talk about people that I think were the greatest in the ring, Brett's right at the top of my list.
yep.
Uh, but was he a great champion? Did he need the belt to be in that for me to feel that way about him? No, I don't think that's to me that he needed to be the WWF or WWE champion to reach that level. I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
There are some superstars that the belt is what made them. in a sense. And Hulk Hogan was certainly somebody that you expected to be a world champion, and he carried that torch splendidly and pulled it off. Randy, I felt the same way, but someone like Brett wouldn't made me feel any different about where he laid in my greatest of superstars.
That's true. No,
Yeah.
it brings a good point where people bring up Mount Rushmores and things of that nature,
Yeah.
like who was the greatest WWF World
But I've
Champion
had
of
that
all time.
conversation many times, Steve, with people about did they need a belt to reach level? Did they need a belt to be successful? Some did, but there were others on it. Jake, he obviously disagrees with me, but I thought Jake was as reached the heights that he reached, and to this day is as revered as he is, because that's who he was, and he didn't need a strap around his waist to make that happen. And
True.
I could name others.
Oh,
So
it's an endless list. As always,
yeah,
I think I even
yeah.
made one years ago. The top 10 wrestlers who never won the WWF World Title, and you have Mr. Perfect, Jake the Snake, $1 Million Man, so on and so forth. Razor Ramon is one of them as well.
Mhm.
Just certain characters who
Right?
you're like, well, these are iconic characters that
Yeah.
you did they need a championship? No. Would they have liked it? Of course,
Of
because they would have probably
course.
made more
You know,
money.
and that's another thing too that I don't think people really understand in wrestling, or maybe that don't really know understand the business of, well, it's wrestling, it's sports entertainment. What does a belt mean to somebody? What difference does it make to them if they get a world championship in their career? Well, it's you look at it in a sense of a measure of where you reach where you reach in that industry.
Mhm.
And for you to have to reach a level where uh, they believe you should be recognized as I guess it comes down like top draw would be more of
Mhm.
an explanation for it, but it is a measure of your success. And if you think about it that way, uh, to to have that belt put on you is an incredible accomplishment. It really is, no matter, and so in that sense. But my view of it is just saying, okay, as far as how people, revere you or think of you and your success in the ring, some guys didn't need that. But I also understand the sense of what it means to have that put on you. And you could, and that goes back to all the territories and everything. A guy's not wanting to give that belt up, and uh, that whole thing, like with Brett, well, he didn't want to before he went down south or wherever. He didn't want to give up that title. Well, if you understand how the business works, you get it, you know. And
Yeah,
so
there's so much
that's an
to dive
argument.
into
People will
that.
argue about that, but at the same, but I totally get what it means to get to that point in your career where you are considered the top draw. You are the guy. You're the man, and it's how else do you measure what you get? Nobody's going to look at like, oh, it was main event last night, and this is how much we earned. No, but if I've got the belt, then I'm the man. I'm the guy.
Yeah.
And these
And
days, same, with a woman, who's in the ring as well. But if you're at the peak, that's where they measure their accomplishment.
if business is doing well, they say it's because of the champion. If business is
Yeah. And
doing
how
not
long they
well,
keep it with,
they
as long as
blame the champion.
right. And how long do you keep that belt? As long as you keep doing that. So if you got a guy that wears it for 2, 3, 4 years or whatever, man, right? There's nobody else who could take that. They weren't drawn better than you. That's a major accomplishment in your
I
career.
know. And
Yeah.
people will probably argue maybe after this saying like, well, Warrior only had the championship once. Yeah, well, he held it from WrestleMania 6 to Royal Rumble. There's plenty of title reigns, say for John Cena or anybody else who only held it for, say, 40 something days or 60 something days. Yeah, they might be a 17 time or an 18 time or 4 times or 5 times, but do the math of how
Yeah.
long they actually held it for and what they were drawing, where the business was at, who was the worst champion, who was the best champion. That's an
Yeah.
argument for a different time. But Warrior and Hulk Hogan, I say, is a must-watch match if you're ever into old school wrestling, because I think this will show you that it doesn't always have to be that this is going to be, as people will call it, a 5-star classic with the greatest moves and backflips and planches. All you need is a story, and the story is, can Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior two good guys find someone who's equal to them and defeat them in combat for a championship. Title for title, though. What was it?
Yeah, right. But and also think about it that uh, uh, imagine if that would have never happened. If that wouldn't have that match wouldn't have happened. That was something people demanded to see that. And they talk about how people would have loved to seen Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. They certainly stepped in the ring together, but it was never the timing of it wasn't right or whatever. But it's like at the peak of where they were, that was kind of the same thing, and people had to see that showdown between Warrior and Hulk Hogan, and they got it.
Yeah, 100%. And out of all Hulk Hogan's WrestleMania matches, Savage, I think, is the top. Like, I don't think you can ever top that match. But besides that, I think Hogan and Warrior put on a clinic here at WrestleMania 6. And I'm so happy we got to discuss this today, because this is one of those things where we talked about it kind of a little bit earlier too, is where you have two stars that are so big that you might be splitting your audience in half, but it still doesn't matter, because both sides of your audience is still buying your merchandise, still tuning into your television shows. And I said earlier, the comparison to me is Rock and Austin. And then really after that, I guess John Cena and Batista. Like, there is really no other groups of people that equal each other. Even you could bring up Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, but honestly, I don't think so. I don't think so, because Hogan was in T-shirts or in gas stations. They were in regular stores. They were on, the shop on the catalogs. Like, Hulk Hogan is a different breed. You brought up Muhammad Ali earlier, saying when you think of boxing, you think of Muhammad Ali. Yeah. But when you think of wrestling, you think of Hulk Hogan. Even if you don't even realize what you're doing a Hulk Hogan impression, because that's how impactful and ingrained his DNA is into professional wrestling. So
that's right. Take
have your thoughts on Hogan.
Say your prayers.
That's right. Say your prayers, take your vitamins, and believe in yourself, I believe was the other one. Yeah. But all in all, Sean Mooney, it's always a pleasure to talk to you about anything professional wrestling. Stop calling my phone, though. I really appreciate that. Stop doing that.
No, I'm not. I'm going to keep calling.
All right, then next week we'll have to discuss something
else. I'm not
else.
out in the yard. I'm not.
yeah. Please. That's not. That looks like Nikolai Volkov. That's
always a pleasure. Really.
Always a pleasure. Well, thank you for being here on 10 Count Media. I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.